All right. Well, I'll call this meeting of the Elko County Board of Trustees for the school district to order. Please join us in a pledge to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Item 1.03, approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All right, moved by Brian, seconded by Teresa. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Nay. Chair votes aye and we approve the agenda. Item 1.04, input from public. This is a period devoted to comments by the general public, if any, and discussion of those comments. In the interest of privacy and due process, the public is requested to not raise personnel issues except in a legally noticed closed personnel session of the board. No action may be taken upon a matter raised. Is there any input from the public? All right, moving on. Item 1.05, receive a presentation from Heather Steele, Elko County School District CTE, Career and Technical Education Facilitator. This is a non-action item. Welcome to the boardroom.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. So I'm Heather Steele. I'm the CTE facilitator for Elko County School District. I'm also an ag teacher at Elko High School. So I wear many hats. I send well wishes from my predecessor, Shane Sutton, who is in a cabin in Wyoming ice fishing right now. And he wanted to tell you all hello. So I'm here just to kind of, first of all, the Board of Trustees is my advisory committee, so to speak. So I'm here to report to you on all the amazing things that's happening in CTE and how we are pushing forward regardless of our current situation. And it's CTE month. The governor did proclaim February as CTE month, so go Sisalak. And it's also FFA week. So our FFA chapters are doing all kinds of cool things as they can at the school right now. So I'm happy to be here to be able to report these positive things during CTE month to you. I come to you with a heavy heart. Last week we lost Bernie Settler, who was a champion for CTE for 50 years. He taught 30 years before he came to Elko County School District, and then he taught here for 30 and has probably touched a number of the people in this room as a teacher. So our thoughts are with the Settler family, okay, and all of the teachers who are mourning his loss. So with that, I'll move right into my presentation. The first document that I attached with my report is called the Perkins Community Local Needs Assessment. That assessment we do every 2 years, gathering our needed data that we're required to report to the state, and the state is required to report to the feds. So just a few highlighted things from that. We discovered that we're losing CTE programs, and we're losing CTE programs because we can't find qualified teachers to teach them. But we are finding that in the programs that we do have and are able to maintain, the teachers who attend a lot of professional development and have access to high technology in their classrooms have the highest retention rates. So our goal then is to continue providing professional development opportunities and technology to our students to keep retaining those CTE students. Those programs will be evaluated, and this document will be rewritten and reevaluated next year. And it's part of the reason why we reach for the funding that we do through the state. Okay, is there any questions on the CL? Do you guys have any questions on the CLNA report? Long and extensive. Perfect. So I'll move to reporting now on the FY21, this current year grant projects. So our Perkins funding, typically Carl Perkins funding goes completely to teacher professional development to allow them to attend national and state conferences. and it pays for their registration and their travel. Well, this year, the majority of those conferences went virtual. And so we saved a ton of money on travel and registration costs. So we turned that money back around to buy online curriculum for our CTE teachers, to buy technology for our classrooms, including incorporating some of our middle school classrooms in, because we want to bring that component in too. Okay. And then our state CTE competitive grant was approved this year. We received $100,000 to purchase equipment for a food science facility at Spring Creek High School. That equipment is currently in the process of being ordered, and some of it has already been ordered. But that equipment is in storage until we get a facility at Spring Creek High School, the ag building that's on for now summer 2022, right, Sean?
I hope so.
Yeah. It's been delayed due to pay-as-you-go failing. And so our fingers are crossed that we will be able to get a facility out there to get that CTE program in place. And then our allocated funding each year supports our students' career and technical student organization travel. It supports their registration and their ability to participate in state and national competitions. It supports our programs with equipment and supplies. And there's one more big thing in there. Our affiliation and curriculum packages for the students to participate in the career and technical student organizations. Career and technical student organizations are co-curricular. They are part of the requirement of those standards for those programs. So those students are involved with their coursework as well. Okay, so do you guys have any questions on the FY21, this current year's grant cycle?
Do we have any backup plans if that building is not a possibility in 22?
I have no idea.
So that program just might be scrapped if we can't get a building.
Well, it shouldn't be, right? They're in the grant assurances. It says that there will be some way.
Okay.
So Ty's an amazing instructor, and he's taken some of the equipment that he can to be able to teach the skills that he can teach. A food science program has to be USDA certified in order for it to operate. So his classroom would never count as being USDA certified, but there are skills that students could learn about food science in his classroom.
Okay.
Okay.
And it would be a facility much like Wells has then with their meat lab, or something
Yeah,
different?
so from what I understand, there is a facility and the plans are already drawn for what they're calling the ag building. But yes, it's largely, and our equipment is largely patterned after what is in Wells.
Okay.
But I think it's more than that, right?
Right.
Sean, thank you. I'm so glad you're here. Any other questions about FY21? So on to FY22. So for competitive this year, we're applying for 3 different projects. So it's not an all in one lump sum, it's 3 different projects. One project is to put a nursing program in at, a nursing assistant program in at Elko and Spring Creek High School. We already have people in the district that are able to teach it. So we already have staff. We just need equipment and we need space. But with Elko High School and the big transition it's going through, we'll have that space, and Sean's ready for space there too. So this particular program can only take 12 students at a time because it is certified by the state of Nevada in order for those students to be able to sit and take the CNA exam and actually be able to graduate high school as certified nurses assistants. So this grant is just for the equipment to get that up and running, and curriculum as well. The second one is multimedia communications at Elko High School, Spring Creek High School, and West Wendover High School. It is simply for equipment as well, because we do have the staff in place already, and this would just add to our programming. Multimedia communications is a program that adds web development, social media marketing, those kinds of skills, video development to our students so that they're ready to enter the workforce in a high demand, high wage environment. And the third one is, I need to breathe through the mask, sorry. Spring Creek Middle School, we're looking at putting CTE programs into the middle school so that our students have the opportunity to explore 5 different CTE programs while they're in middle school, hoping that when they get to high school, they know that they want to be in ag, they know that they want to be in media technologies. So they'll stick and they'll stay and they'll graduate with their industry recognized credentials and their post-secondary credit that they earn from GDC. So there's 5 programs there: ag, media technologies, health science and public safety. Okay.
Is business,
What's that?
business,
Media technologies and there's one more. Oh, education, hospitality, and human services.
hospitality.
Mr. Reddick already has the staff in place for that. We're just looking to purchase equipment and curriculum for those programs. So the way the competitive grant works is we could one, all, or 2, or none of them could be approved with state competitive money. That pot is $3.65 million. So with any luck, they'll give us a little. And then our Perkins grant, again, this year will just simply support teachers who want to attend national and state conferences with their registration cost and travel. And then our allocated money, which supports our current programs in place with CTSO travel, curriculum packages, and equipment and supplies for the programs.
So I have a question, Heather.
Go ahead, Candace.
So on these grant applications, how does that process work? Like, does each school have input, or do you guys have a committee that comes up with this? Or, you know, like, can each school put in and say, I would like this program, or how does that work? What's the process involved?
So kind of throughout the year, right? So this is my process because Shane had his kind of his own thing going, right? So throughout, when I came in July, we've been having conversations with different administrators and things about things that we could potentially put into place. The nursing program, Shane was already working on. So I was just following through and applying for that money. Multimedia communications came up. The state just approved it as a new program. And when our teachers saw it, they expressed a lot of interest in being able to teach it. And we feel that it's a good skill set for our students to have. So those teachers were like, yeah, let's do this. And then with the middle school piece, it's always kind of been something that needed to happen. We just got the traction to get it going this year. So with the Perkins and the allocated, I send out a Google form and they fill out anything that they want to apply for. And then when it comes time for whatever dollar amount we get, then I'll go through and figure out how to make it all work.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions?
I had a question about the nursing program. Is that a competitive program to get into then, because it's limited to 12 students?
In all theory, hopefully, no, it won't be a competitive program, but it would be great if it turned out to be that. So max is 12 students. If we'll start with 1 in Elko and 1 in Spring Creek and see what happens. And if it continues to grow, then we continue to add more sections.
And
so
is
that
that
it's
12
not
at each
competitive.
school then, or
What's
12
that?
collectively? Is it 12 at each school or 12 collectively?
No, it's 12 in each school. So it's 12 in each cohort or group. So if it blew up at Spring Creek and Sean decided to put 7 sections in, then it would be 12 per class.
Excellent.
Mhm.
Hypothetically, then, if it becomes a popular program, I know there's some momentum in that field. Could somebody in Wells say, do their coursework in the morning and then possibly attend the nursing program in the afternoon in the area?
Sure. Whatever the site administrator, I mean, it's site choices and if it gains momentum. And I mean, there's nothing saying that we can't apply to put a program into Wells too. It was just Nelco and Spring Creek starting out, we can share an instructor. The instructor is kind of already in place and the wheels are already moving.
Gotcha.
Right? So,
Okay.
yeah.
I just didn't want to leave the outlying areas out of
Yeah.
the picture, especially for a great program like that.
Yeah. And they are my focus. Okay, so then I'll just move on to the positive stuff. If that's okay with everybody. So one of the things that's not included in my report is each year we're required 2 high schools go through what they call the program quality standards review. And it's a huge process. And it's meant to just be a review for program improvement. So in 1920, Elko High School went through the review process, and three of our programs, we are three of our programs were identified as programs of excellence. So there's only, as of 1920, there was only 28 programs, CTE programs in the state of Nevada recognized as program of excellence. Elko County had 3 at Elko High School. Floriculture, ornamental horticulture, and sports medicine were all recognized as programs of excellence. And programs of distinction, you get the fancy plaque, agriculture, leadership, communication, and policy, early childhood education, and vet science. Thank you, Mr. Sutton. We're all recognized as programs of distinction in the state of Nevada. So we had 3 out of 16. So that was pretty amazing stuff. This year, West Wendover and Jackpot went through that review process, and we're still awaiting state results on those things. It's not a punitive process, it's a continuous improvement process. Okay, so on to the positive stuff. Great Basin College Elko High School now has 2 new CTE pathways in collaboration with GBC, and GBC has a grant from the governor's office, and we put construction technology and heating, ventilation, and cooling refrigeration programs in at Elko High School. Both of those programs are full and overflowing.
I have a question there. Before you
Okay.
go on for a second. Is there any plans at all to add plumbing and electrical to that?
Well, plumbing and electrical is included in the construction technology piece.
Okay.
So the way that it's designed to be set up is the students would take construction 1 and construction 2 as freshmen and sophomores, and then HVAC 1 and HVAC 2 as juniors and seniors, because HVAC is apparently a very complicated thing to understand.
Okay.
So
Perfect. Thank
both
you.
of those programs are meant to serve students. West Wendover High School Welding, Furniture, and Cabinet Making Program, 31 students have completed the OSHA 10-hour training. That is an industry recognized credential by the governor's office. Those students are now considered workforce ready and can walk onto any construction site in the United States that requires OSHA training. Spring Creek High School FBLA had 16 top 4 placements and 27 5th through 10 placements at the virtual 2020 state conference. Our local businessman, Jeff Watson, was given the FBLA Business Person of the Year. They also received the Dominator Award for membership, the Gold Seal chapter, 1st place in digital scrapbook, 2nd place in the local annual business report, 2nd place in sweepstakes award, and the Who's Who Award and gold level at the champion chapter level. That was the 2020 state results for students who all of a sudden just had to go virtual. Owyhee High School, their fashion, textiles, construction class were featured in a magazine named Quilt Folk. They put together some quilts for the SPED program at Owyhee, and they were recognized nationally in the magazine for it. Jackpot FBLA has 46 members and 3 officers. They competed in a regional event online. They got 1st place in business etiquette, 1st place in career exploration, 2nd place in business etiquette, 3rd place in career exploration, 3rd place in business etiquette, 2nd in career exploration, and 1st place in organizational leadership. I have pictures in my report of projects that Spring Creek High School furniture and cabinet making students did at home during the COVID shutdown, which included building sheds, refinishing chairs, building podiums for Elko Motor Company, adding an awning to a shed, and making a desk bigger for online learning purposes. And I have more. Wells High School FFA are having a great FFA year despite their virtual requirement. They had a 1st high individual in the state range competition and went on to tie for 3rd in the Western National Range competition. The student went on to win high score in the plant identification at nationals. She was a sophomore, and it was the first time she ever competed. They also had a second place finish in soils in the fall, and a second place individual finisher was a Wells freshman. So that's awesome. And then they've done their monthly meetings. They've had their Christmas parties virtually and done Secret Santa virtually. So they're cruising right along. I have pictures here of a Spring Creek High School furniture and cabinet making project that's been completed in class during hybrid learning. And we had a Wells High School graphic design student who did a design for the new Hampton Inn. Is it still in Hampton? Anyway, did a new design for the Hampton Inn. They're going to print t-shirts and sell them out of the hotel from one of our high school designs. And then I've got a photo that here of Jackpot High School project also from hybrid learning. Jackpot's been in school full time, so they've got a little more time than we do. And then of course, my own shameless plug, Elko High School has a vet med program that has a dog grooming business, and it's open and taking appointments for anybody who needs their puppies cleaned. And we've been open since mid-October, figuring out how to manipulate things. So last is the boring data, but still good. So I provided you guys with two major report and places to get data in the event that you really like data. One is the Perkins, what we call CAR report, which is the individualized school district's performance based on what they want us to do in Perkins, and then statewide stuff. So based on that, CTE student participation in Elko County continues to increase. Our grad rates continue to be near or above the graduation rate of the expectation, which is 80%. Elko County is at 91%. Elko County exceeds the state performance standards in grad rates. CTE students who earn college credit while they're in high school, which is almost 14%. I think the state level of expectation is like 6. So 14% of the students who are in our CTE programs are also earning college credit, which is awesome. Non-traditional participation, which is gender non-traditional. So for example, males are non-traditional for early childhood education because it is an environment that is dominated by females. So that's 36.75%. Academic proficiency in science is close to 31%, and academic proficiency in reading is almost 45%, which far exceeds what the state requirements are. So yay us, we're doing great. And then I did provide you with some reports regarding kind of how our CTE students break down in comparison and looking at our concentrators, participants, and completers. You guys have any questions?
I just want to make a comment. I'm glad you included the pics and stories about each of the programs and what they're doing during this time, because it's nice to see student work and the fruits of your labor and everybody's labor when it comes to doing CTE in the district. So thank you.
You're welcome.
I just had a comment, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought I read in the report, and I was very glad to see it, that there's been an increase in the number of students not being removed from the CTE classes due to remediation for core class areas that they were struggling in. Is that correct?
Right. So the data shows that high schools who have an advisory period, somewhere where the kids are receiving some kind of intervention, those high schools are having higher rates of CTE students because they have less rates of students in credit recovery, remediation, and those things.
Yeah, so I thought that was great.
Thanks. Anything else? Awesome. Thank you, you guys, for all that you do. Happy CTE month.
Thank you, Heather. I know that this board has always supported CTE, and I'm hopeful that we continue to create those opportunities for the youth, because I'm a little prejudiced here, but as a CTE instructor, it's great hearing stories about how these kids are successful and how they work through and overcome the adversity. And this year especially, I know that through the course of the year, there's several of the CTE instructors were working ways in order to get students into the classroom, maintaining the social distancing and all of those other situations. So my hat's off and congratulations to all the CTE teachers and to you as a facilitator. So thank you. Next item, 2.01, the superintendent's report. Dr. Robinson.
Well, that was great news. So I'm going to follow up with more great news. So thank you very much. That was a great presentation. I think many know that Governor Sisolak has instituted certain relaxations of some of the COVID restrictions as they relate to schools. There are a few points that are important to schools, and I've got just a couple of slides to pull out the pieces that are most important and relate to us the most. So I think we're getting to that next slide. So, okay, there we go. So the first one that really has had a big impact on the efforts that we're working on right now is the increased space capacity for schools. Currently, we've been in the 20, with the governor's state pause, we've been at 25% capacity. February 15th, he lifted the capacity for the state to 35%. For schools, he has lifted it to 75%, and that's just in the schools. He has decreased the social distancing requirements for students. And I'm talking about specifically in the high schools where the change is from 6 feet distance between students to 3 feet distance between students. It doesn't apply to adults. That's still 6 feet from student to adult, and from adults to adults, it's still 6 feet. He has increased capacity on our buses, and you know that our buses, our inability to be able to get a lot of our kids on the buses has really hampered our ability to be able to get kids to and from school. So this is very welcome, and he has increased that capacity from 50% to 66%. And that is having a positive impact on what we're going to be doing. And then he allowed for close contacts in sports, close contact sports, and we're talking about football. And this is only under the condition that all students, coaches, and then the staff personnel, anybody related to football and our personnel are tested once a week. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what's on this slide first, and then I'll talk a little bit about athletics and where we are in regards to meeting that requirement. So right now, currently, almost, not quite half of our schools are already in full in-person learning model, which has been exciting. We have they've been coming online slowly, but as we've been able to work out mandates, we've been able to get schools in. The remaining schools that are still in the hybrid model are now under these new regulations. We're starting to work towards being able to come back into the full in-person model with the expectation that all of our schools in Elko County will be full in person. So we're excited about that. There are still a number of details that need to be worked out, and I'm going to give you an example. In order to maintain the 3-foot distancing, again, it's different for the high school now. But in order to maintain that 3-foot distancing in any of the classroom spaces that we have is going to require that the classroom space is most likely the spaces are going to require some reconfiguration. So I'm thinking about the elementary classrooms as an example. They've already been 3-foot distancing, but now we can get 75% of our kids into an elementary school classroom, still maintaining that 3-foot distance. In a typical year, when we're not dealing with COVID, we're not looking to keep kids 3 feet away from each other. That's not an issue, but it certainly is at 3 feet. So in order to get our full class into a class in the 75% capacity, which should be our full classrooms, we have to reconfigure, which means some storage furniture that we use for storage or other furniture that we have in the classrooms may have to come out or be reconfigured, which means teachers have a lot of supplies and a lot of things that they utilize through the course of the year. So those may have to be moved, pared down. So that's a considerable amount of work and a lot of detail to work through. And that's just one example, but I did want to give you an example about why it's taking some time to be able to make these changes. But everybody is working really hard towards that end. Scheduling and transportation issues still need to be worked out and coordinated in order to facilitate this move. So schools in the hybrid model, right now we have a target date of the week of March 8 to make this transition. And this gives them time to make those changes with the details that, just an example I gave. And everybody's working very hard to make this ambitious timeline. Although the increase in capacity for the buses, as I said, is really making a positive impact. That's really going to be helpful. And we should be able to facilitate the ability to transport all of our kids to and from school. We are asking those families who are able to please bring your children to and from school. And one of the things that we have to see what happens is we are still making available to those families who wish to remain in the full distance learning model. We have that option available to families now. It will continue to be an option to families if they choose. Schools will be contacting those families to find out if they've changed their mind, if they'll be coming back to school, because that will also be something we have to consider when making this transition, and then consider when we're talking about transportation. So there's still a lot to work through. So Mac, if you'll go to the next slide, I'll talk a little bit about what's going to continue. The first thing that stays in place is that while in school, that all students and staff are still required to wear face coverings. There will still be as I said, 6-foot distancing between students and adults, and between adults and adults. All touch point areas will be cleaned throughout the day, as they have been, as well as the specialized cleaning that we do in the evening and at the end of the day. And then, of course, a more specialized cleaning should there be an instance of a positive case. Parents are asked to continue monitoring their children for signs of illness. And please know that if your child is ill, we ask that your child remain home from school. If your child develops symptoms while at school, and that symptom could be a fever or a cough or a headache or congestion, any of the symptoms that are related to COVID or could be related to COVID, your child will still be sent home. So those requirements have not changed. They still remain the same. Another thing I just want to point out is about contact tracing. The governor has reduced for high schoolers that social distancing to 3 feet. However, the contact tracing has not been reduced. So if we have a case of a student or somebody, excuse me, test positive, the contact tracing will still, excuse me, encompass 6 feet social distancing, even though students are 3 feet. So that's just something to keep in mind that I just wanted to point out, excuse me, to families. I don't know how something can go down the wrong way. There's nothing can get through my mask. Excuse me. Okay, so I'll talk a little bit about athletics. Practice for the fall season has already begun. It's been wonderful that our students have been on the fields and practicing in the gyms. The governor lifted the ban on football for the season, as I mentioned, but with the caveat, the requirement that all students and personnel related to football, only the sport of football, must be tested every week. Excuse me, once a week. We are very grateful to our public health officer, Dr. Putnam, and our county for their wonderful support in facilitating this requirement. This is a huge lift. We have 300 to 350 people that are going to have to be tested every week. So it's significant. And we are really grateful to our county for facilitating this. Today, excuse me, we signed an agreement with our county ambulance service. They are going to facilitate all weekly testing for all the communities in our county. That is significant, and we are deeply, deeply grateful and appreciative of their support in helping us to get our students back on the field. So that's great.
Dr. Robinson, are we able to utilize the Binex test rather
Yes.
than the PCR?
Thank you for that. Let me get a drink. Yes, we are. As a matter of fact, it is the Binex test that will be utilized.
Okay.
Dr. Putnam had, I don't know if you remember, in December, he presented before the board and he mentioned that he had ordered a large supply of the Binex test, excuse me, in order to be able to facilitate whatever type of testing that we had hoped would eventually come. And so he has that supply with the county, and those are the tests that they'll be utilizing.
Okay.
Is there
Very
any
good.
significant difference in cost between those two tests?
It is no cost to us. That's something that's being supplied by the state. So the only cost that we have is an administrative cost for the entity that does the testing. And that's part of, we are so fortunate to be partnering with our county ambulance service because the cost is really nominal compared to what I know a lot of districts in the state are having to pay. So we really are incredibly grateful for that. So that's great. That testing will start next week. And of course, athletes and personnel will be informed when that begins. The other, I know, point of question that the board had was about spectators. So there are restrictions and mandates around the idea of spectators. We will be allowing spectators. However, in order to meet the mandates, there will be some restrictions. And the restrictions that I'm going to mention to you are across the state. All districts are doing this. For home games, each student athlete will be allowed 2 tickets per sporting event. Visitors for away teams visitors who come to watch their children from other districts will not be allowed to enter into the field in the same way that our families, our visitors who go to other districts will not be able to enter into their gyms and their fields. So, yep, so that all of that will be worked out at the school level, so athletes will know when that begins. And
What about transportation of the athletes and the teams for the,
transportation, because of the expansion of the capacity. Thank you. Transportation is we feel that we're going to be able to transport student athletes. We are asking again, if families choose to transport students, that they certainly, we do have the ability in our policy to allow for that, but they must get, they must sign a release at their school prior to taking the students to the game.
That would make it tough to take your kid to a sporting event and have to sit outside.
It will. Yeah, there's not a lot of motivation for it, understandably. Yeah.
Who is the entity, or which entity would be able to perhaps change that? Would it be the NIAA, or would it be the Superintendent's Association, the governor, to allow, based on space to have the visitors?
The challenge is with the mandate still, and directive, is it 34 or 38? I'm not sure on the numbers, but the mandates, for instance, students and the spectators must remain 25 feet away from coaches. So just in order to be able to facilitate that, we're very limited then. It limits our space in the gyms and the bleachers in order to be able to have people there. There's still the capacity rates for even outside events that limit our ability to be able to have spectators. So these were things that were in the NIAA's guidelines, and they're adopted with all the districts.
Okay.
So Mr. McEnany, if I'm leaving anything out.
No, that's correct. And obviously the capacity of the gym will have a huge impact on how many even local spectators manage to get in. We have huge differences between the size of our gyms. Again, to compare, say, Elko High School or Spring Creek High School gym to a Carlin, obviously you'll be able to get more spectators in the Elko High School gym, but still severely limited. So in order to ensure that the home team's parents have an opportunity to get in there, that was the decision. Once we start opening up the outside, first of all, it becomes extremely logistically difficult to contact trace those individuals. And through the ticket system, it allows us to better monitor and contact trace all the individuals that are in the gym. The big limiter is at 25 feet. Now, for a football game, that's not that bad, right? So obviously, you know, if we look at the bleachers at Elko High School, it is what it is. But if we go inside to say the gym at Elko High School, automatically we're taking away one side of the gym completely, because that is just for student athletes and coaches. So half the gym is gone from the start. The other half of the gym, you have to measure up 25 feet from the playing surface, and that's gone. So anything above that is now open for seating. So again, very limited numbers. And again, if we think of some of our smaller gyms, there's nowhere inside a gym that is 25 feet from the playing surface at all. So just based on the configuration of our gyms, some people are going to be able to have crowds, some are not, following the NIAA gubernatorial directives.
At the softball and baseball fields, would they still be able to sit in their cars and watch the game without tickets or anything like that?
Oh, absolutely. Like if you go to the Elko, you know, if you go over to Kump Field and you're looking over, we're not going to kick people out of their cars. They're fairly safe, socially distanced within their own vehicles. What we're talking about are people in the bleachers, right? And again, bleachers at a baseball field, if they're within 25 feet of the on deck circle, let's say, then you can't sit there. So you move the bleachers back and things of that nature, because the directives apply equally to outdoor sports as well as indoor sports. Again, football field's not bad. You have the field, you have the track, and you go there. Now, if at any time that, again, we'll look at some of our smaller fields, if spectators are within 25 feet of the student athletes, then the teams themselves, the coaches, now count towards the total limit of individuals in the facility. If you can keep the spectators 25 feet away, then the student athletes and the coaches don't count towards capacity limits. They're within 25 feet, now they are part of capacity limits, now we've eliminated all spectators completely. So we're really gonna have to try to follow those rules. In addition to, again, if you have multiple sports going, a freshman game, those parents can attend, and then at the end of the game, everybody leaves. They gotta spray down all the bleachers, and then the JV squad's parents who have their tickets get to come in. So you have to empty the gym out of all spectators in between events. So the time between events is now also going to be extended. So there's a lot of logistic things going on. Right now, all of our principals are creating schematics for exactly how many spectators they can get in. They're doing a bang up job of getting that done and get that in, so then we can publicize that. Some schools may be able to allow more spectators. They have bigger gyms, and that's basically what it comes down to.
So Mr. McEnany, you keep referencing the gyms, but we've only got one sport that's an indoor sport from here to the end of the year, and that's volleyball. But all of the outdoor facilities, are you kind of making schematics of the outdoor facilities as well?
Yes.
And people can be around the entire outside of the field somewhere, whether it's football, softball, baseball, soccer.
We are.
Any of those
schematic-
cross country?
Yeah, so schematics are being created for all of our playing fields. And again, the social distancing rules of 6 feet apart apply if you're standing along a fence as well. If you're indoors, outdoors, they all apply equally to all sporting events.
And in the smaller gyms, smaller fields outside, do we have a possibility to live stream perhaps?
Yes, we're looking into all of that. In fact, most schools have that ability. So that would go to the other districts as well. So we do have parents, to, you know, trustee Wines' point, if we do have parents that drive their kids, yeah, it's a bit of a bummer. They can't go in and watch, but they can live stream that event from their cell phone. Or whatever. They have, you know, a 64-inch in the back of their RV.
I was gonna say-
Knock yourself out.
I was gonna say, I don't recall seeing a jumbotron in Elko.
Okay.
The logistical hurdles here are huge. And our people are doing excellent work in overcoming those as we speak.
What about live streaming like the out of town games as well? Since we can't, go as visitors.
So live streaming, again, like I just mentioned, that will be at all the facilities. Again, we can't determine what Lowry does over in Winnemucca. We can't dictate that you will live stream. We just hope that everyone acts in good faith and puts forward their best effort.
I think all schools are gonna use the
Correct.
NFHS network, so it's gonna be a common platform for watching the games regardless of where they're held.
Absolutely.
Is that one for a fee though? That's what I thought. Okay.
They actually own the rights to broadcast or live stream an athletic, not to use their platform.
Gotcha.
Okay,
So a lot of exciting changes coming up.
yes.
Yeah. And that's my report.
All right. Any questions of the superintendent? Yes.
Yeah, Dr. Robinson, could you just speak again to the 75% increase in capacity versus the 3-foot social distancing? Because the 3-foot social distancing is still going to be the limiting factor. Is that correct?
It is, yes. We feel that with 75% capacity, we will be able to, that's enough room to be able to get a full classroom in. But we still then have to contend with 3-foot distancing. And that, that in a typical classroom, you're not setting up with 3-foot distancing in mind. So it still requires that we spread out to get all the kids in.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have, how do these mandates changes with the CDC guidelines with the vaccination of, I believe it's once you're vaccinated for 3 months after, you don't have to quarantine if you're exposed. How is that for our faculty staff?
That, those are two different things. And what the CDC has said, and I believe Bobby Shanks is listening. So Bobby, if I get anything incorrect, please feel free to jump in. But once you receive your second vaccination, you still have to go 14 days before you're, it's greater than 2 weeks. And then you have 3 months. And if in that 3-month time, you are exposed to somebody who has tested positive for COVID, you do not have to quarantine. As long as you have no symptoms. As long as the person is asymptomatic for that 3-month period, they would not have to quarantine.
So that should help us with the exclusion, at least on the staff side.
At least with adults, that should help us. Yes.
And do we have any numbers on approximately how many of the teachers and staff have been vaccinated?
We haven't received those numbers yet. We're waiting to hear from our insurance company. It is going to be up, when the hospital, and everybody does this in timeframes and batches, but when the hospital submits the claims to the insurance company and they process them, they will let us know what those numbers are.
Okay.
And just to make sure I'm understanding, March 8th is the target date for all the schools.
That's our target date for the schools that are currently hybrid to go into the full in-person. For those schools that may say, okay, we're ready, they can certainly go in earlier to the full in-person, providing that their transition is going to work with transportation. So we can't have some schools doing a an AM, PM, and then some schools doing a full all day. It will just not coordinate with transportation. But if that can line up, we may have schools that go in sooner. Otherwise, we target the week of March 8th.
I think that this information that you're sharing with us, is there some way that we could get that on the district's website, a letter to the community or something like that, and get that out as soon? Because I'm sure there's a lot of questions out there that individuals need to know, and to help us move through this next transition to get back as close to normal as we possibly can.
I do
So-
have something prepared that just outlines what I just said tonight to put out for the community. And then it's very just this overarching presentation that I've done this evening that I will get out to the community so that the schools have the space to be able to get out their more detailed plan.
Do we foresee any, especially in the secondary, because that was one of our biggest problems with the high schools, any problems? Because I believe the last meeting we were talking that Elko High School, for example, would have to go almost down to 2 feet versus the 3 foot. So are we still going to have some restrictions in some of the classes in the Elko High School? Do you know, Mr. McEnany, or off?
So right now, the site admin and the teachers are working on that issue at Elko High School as we speak. They are looking at rearranging some class sections. Again, the big difference now is at 75%. Right now, they were looking at those issues at 3 feet and 35% room capacity. And well, I'm sorry, at 6 feet and 35% room capacity. Now at 3 feet and 75% room capacity, that's a game changer.
Okay.
That's 75. So a lot of those issues now, is there a possibility that some sections may have to be rearranged here where you take these 3 kids and move them to this class to do that? That's a possibility. But again, Mr. Wickersham was extremely, his outlook was very favorable and they were going to be able to pull it off.
Okay, good. And my last question on your report is with the buses, so we're increasing the capacity, but the buses aren't really changing in size. So can we actually increase the capacity and still remain the 3%, or is that realistic? Or
The requirement is, part of the change in the requirement is to make every effort to stay the 3 feet. And to stay the 3 feet as much as you could, to the best extent of your ability possible. So the way we have it configured, the way the transportation department has worked on it, for the most part, it's still maintaining that 3 foot distance. It may not be a perfect 3 feet, but the restrictions do give us an allowance if we have to make some adjustments to it.
it'd be 34 inches?
Yeah, exactly. But it's still going to be very spread out. And of course, if we have students that are from the same household, there isn't that requirement that they be as spread out. So if we have families, that would actually help because it would compact some kids together so that we would have more space for others. And that's, again, it's not going to be a perfect science. That's why we were asking if families are able to please transport your children so that we make sure we are staying well within those guidelines.
Okay, Brian?
Going back to what Luke was saying about Elko High School, I noticed on the construction update, March 1st is the tentative finish to the STEM building, and wondering, are those rooms bigger than what some of the science classrooms currently hold? Okay. So it might be pushed back further. As soon as it's finished, will teachers be able to occupy? Okay, I'm seeing.
So you can talk about occupying, but again, the way that those classrooms are designed, because they're designed around these science labs, the ability to just move stuff out and make more space doesn't exist. Because we're talking about things that are built into the floor around lab centers. So the idea that the rooms may be physically larger is realistic. However, by the basic room design, just because they're larger doesn't mean you get more kids in them. So.
Yeah, I like what they did up at the high tech center actually with spacing in that lab. It was good to see. And then I had one other thing too. I know today, and it's really soon, and I'm wondering maybe at the next meeting that we can have an update. The Department of Education has allowed states to have waivers now for assessments. And I know Mo Dennis was speaking to the SB 83 today at the committee meeting and looking at waivers of those assessments. I don't know if we'd have to wait till the bill is actually addressed by the full legislature.
It was Washington County that introduced that bill, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
Okay, there we go.
Okay, any other questions? All right, we'll move on. Item 3.01. It says receipt, review, and possible approval of request for purchase of retirement service credit. We are not going to take this item up this evening, so the chair would entertain a motion to table this to one of the March meetings.
Move to table.
Okay, been moved by Brian, seconded by Ira to table a motion for purchase of retirement service to one of our March meetings. Is there any other discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Chair votes aye and the motion is approved. Moving on, 3.02, receipt, review, and possible approval of the formation of a curriculum adoption committee for guidance counselors for possible action. So with that, Mr. McEnany?
I'm gonna ask Ms. Sarah Sanders to join us. She is
Hi,
a
Sarah.
counselor at Spring Creek High School and has taken on a lead role within our guidance counselors. What we're asking, this is the formal approval to move forward with the adoption standardized guidance counselor curriculum be implemented in our K-12 schools. As we know, the lack of being able to go to school due to the COVID pandemic has created a high need, particularly in the mental health area for our students. So we actually began these discussions at the beginning of the school year about having a formalized common curriculum with which to work with our students, something that quite frankly, our guidance counselors have never had in this school district of a district adopted curriculum. That curriculum would serve multiple purposes. First of all, it would make the observation and evaluation of our guidance counselors more standardized across our district for our administrators, and would also assist, and that's why Sarah's here, so if you have any questions specifically about that, it would, I think, make their jobs a heck of a lot easier so that those interdepartmental conversations, we're all talking about the same game in essence. So if you have any questions.
I was just wondering if it was a comprehensive curriculum or was just specific to mental health issues.
Our goal would be a comprehensive program. Again, we don't have anything like that that's consistently used even across our elementary schools or middle or high schools. We don't have one curriculum that each level uses. Certainly nothing that we use K-12. And so that would be our goal. Something where the topics that we address as counselors are consistently being addressed no matter what school you're at, and that we have kind of that basis as we approach those topics with children in schools.
And is there some guidance from NDE as far as a statewide curriculum that they're tapping into or that you were tapping into?
So there is not. So in my discussions with NDE, there is no state recognized guidance counselor instruction materials or curriculum, which is why we're doing it at the district level. And that's where this committee comes in. It's kind of a second order change process. So we don't have to get this approved by the state. We have to get it approved by the board. And this is the first step.
And the counselors just have professional standards, but not these curricular standards.
Right.
Okay.
And who would the committee answer to? Would they answer to each individual schools or to the superintendent?
So the committee would answer to the board.
Okay.
So the board is fundamentally required to approve all curricular adoptions and instruction material adoptions for the school district.
So you're looking, oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, so this committee is really just coming up with the curricula, and then that curricula will come back before this board. Is that
For
how-
approval. And in part of this is the selection of a board member to be a member of the committee. So to serve as a liaison between the committee itself and the board should questions arise.
So you were basically just asking to be able to move forward with this curriculum committee and then be bringing back information as we go through.
That is correct.
So,
That's okay. I was
Move to
saying,
approve.
okay. We have a motion.
is there a second?
Second.
Okay, been moved by Luke, seconded by Brian to approve the creation, I guess would be the best thing, of this guidance curriculum.
So I do still have a question. So,
Okay,
I
is
know
there
s-
any discussion?
Yes.
There we go.
So I know some of our schools use the Obeas bullying program. I'm not sure the official title, and I know we have 2 national trainers in our district. So how does that relate to this?
I don't know exactly, to
Okay,
be honest.
I mean, is it something we get
Alveus
rid
is a
of? Is it something
program-
we continue? I don't know.
So I can kind of go into that. So the Alveus anti-bullying program is a statute where every school district was required to have a specific anti-bullying curriculum. Now, that doesn't necessarily have to be taught by counselors. That can be taught by anyone. So that's a little bit separate than what we're talking about here. The Alveus program will continue because you're absolutely correct. Member, that we do have 2 trained. In fact, I was speaking to one of those individuals that their certification is coming up, and I told them, yeah, we'll help get you recertified. So that will continue in addition to this.
Okay.
The plan is, this is a far more wide ranging. And again, it might be a little bit different K-6 than it is 7-8, than it is 9-12, obviously, because the needs of the students would change radically. You wouldn't want to teach a second grader the same thing you're teaching a junior.
But as counselors in schools, we do have a responsibility to address different topics, not just individually with students, but to our entire student body. At the elementary level, it is different, where they do more classroom interactions versus secondary, where we focus more on college and career, maybe. But to have a platform that we use, again, where it's consistent, where lessons and materials and resources are laid out for counselors, for other staff members, for parents and community members as well. So that way everybody has a clear understanding of what we do in the school.
Particularly if parents ask questions, what is the purpose of this? Why is it being taught? We say, this is the district adopted curriculum. That's why we're teaching that. So right now, we lack that ability.
When I first saw this, I was really excited because I think Elko could be at the forefront of doing something like this actually statewide, because it's in a lot of need. I hear a lot from counselors from other counties that we just don't know what direction to take some of the aspects of dealing with students. So
I think there's a huge need for this right now.
yes.
We do try to lead.
And I think consistency will be important in being able to move in that direction. And when we're all using different programs, it's hard to say we're doing anything the same.
Well, and if you're looking for a volunteer, unless somebody else on the board would like to volunteer, this is something that, it's been, I've heard from a lot of parents about their concerns about, mental health and everything else. And so unless somebody else would like to volunteer, I'll volunteer to be part of your committee.
Sold.
That
All
was just
right.
gonna be my question, is how often do you expect this committee to meet?
So there are guidelines as dictated in the document that's on board docs. I believe, right off the top of my head, 'cause I don't want to give you bad info, it's at least, 3 times a year to not only and we might have it in place sooner than that, but then also to review ongoing, and the committees are formed for 3 years. So it's not just an adoption committee, but it's an adoption and review, continuous review.
Okay, any other discussion?
Very encouraging.
All right, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Chair votes aye, and the motion is approved. Thank you. All right, moving on. The next item, 3.03, receipt, review, and possible approval of policy, transportation to athletic events for possible action. I know that Teresa had requested at our last board meeting to have it on the agenda. We've gone through, Dr. Robinson.
After research, we found that the policy that is currently in place already does allow for the ability for parents to transport their students to and from the athletic events. What is required, though, is that there's a release that is signed at the schools beforehand. So we're making sure that there's already releases already prepared at the schools because usually the student would go on a bus to the event, but a parent may bring them home. Now we're adjusting it so that there's the ability to take them to the event and to bring them home as well. So we'll have those available at the schools.
And I think the real need for this was before we had the changes in the mandates, so that now we can allow a full team to be on a bus and not have to take 2 buses for one team for some of these events. I mean, football will be different, but practices are different too. They have to divide the team up on different fields. So, I'm glad to have seen that change so that we don't, we can still get our athletes and students to their activities and athletic events.
And will it accommodate something like a freshman JV and varsity team based on the distancing?
Based on the
Requirements.
distancing right now, we feel confident we'll be able to manage it, to facilitate that.
And then this is something most likely, this is for this situation, but down the road, we probably don't consider those except in extreme circumstances where
To take the student
to be, yeah, for parents.
Yeah, so, and that would be up to the board. Right now, the policy is written in such a way that that the board can set those parameters. So,
Okay.
it does give you that flexibility. We're saying that because of the wording that's in the policy that allows for it, which is why you don't need to vote on another policy. We're saying we know that this is the preference of the board to be able to do it during this time period that we have right now.
With administrative approval at each school.
With administrative approval and a signed release.
Gotcha.
Signed release.
All right, with that, if we want to take a motion, probably the appropriate motion is to postpone it indefinitely, which in effect kills that motion, if we'd like to do that.
I don't think we need to have a motion. I think
Okay.
we can just,
We're going to
We can
move
just-
on. That it's been addressed because we weren't sure of that. I know I looked into the policy and I think it's JHF for student trips. And it seemed to be pretty self-explanatory and clear. And the need for it during this transition that we're going through, that it would be appropriate, that we didn't need to add to the policy manual. So moving on, the consent agenda 4.01.
Move to approve it. Second.
All right, been moved by Iris, seconded by Luke, to approve the consent agenda. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Chair votes aye, and the motion is approved. Moving to 5.01, report from our NASB director for possible action. Mr. Wines.
Well, the bill that got a lot of attention this last week was that SB 76. And it abolishes nations and committees, data commission on state financial literacy advisory council, on education technology, the competency-based education network, the council to establish academic standards, public schools, abolishes statewide council training programs, abolishes the governing body. There's all of these duties to the Department of Education. And NASB's stance on it was everybody supported it, getting all those in one place. And there was some concern that the Department of Ed might be a little overworked on that, but some of these committees don't do anything. Some of them do a lot, and they thought they'd be able to work through the ones that don't accomplish much and maybe focus more on the ones that do. And that was a big one this week. If there's a bill related to education and you guys want me to comment on it, I can. And let me know. They want to know, support some, opposed to them, need to be modified. Gone through a list, quite a few of them that are related to education. That was kind of the hot one this week.
And the one about appointees on the school board, that's up again, I guess. But that only encompasses Washoe and Clark, correct?
Yes.
They're trying
Yes.
to do that, but it's in the Nevada Constitution that you change something for one district, you change it for all.
Oh, geez.
So.
Yeah. Senator Key Keffer has that bill.
They
Yeah.
missed that for quite a few years, but yeah, it's back in there, everybody is thinking that maybe the budget might require quite a bit more attention. That might get lost.
You remember offhand what the number on that one was? Is that a Senate bill?
That
Or is it Senate?
one on the appointed school board,
Yeah.
I don't know what it,
Okay.
It just got I'm not sure it's been assigned a number,
yeah.
but it was just introduced. So it does have a number. We'll check on that here this week in a couple of days. There is a conference call with Senator Gokachia and Assemblyman Ellison and I think Assemblyman Hardy Hafen. And we'll bring that up and find out exactly how that's going. Senator Gokachia had a conversation with me earlier with regards to that. So we'll follow up.
That's.
I was wondering with a thought that I had this afternoon before the meeting. I know that you had tried to coordinate a meeting out at the 71 Ranch. And because of the COVID restrictions, that we weren't able to get that put together. With the governor loosening the restrictions, I was wondering, yeah, obviously it must be, it's too late to try to
It's still
reschedule.
on for June.
Okay,
It never did get,
okay.
yeah, so.
So, and then also new board member training. And it was scheduled to happen, I think, coming up in March. And I don't know if has the district heard anything from Deb?
I haven't heard anything from her. They were gonna coordinate some of that with the conference that got canceled.
Okay,
And she was working on the logistics of that.
okay. Very good. Is there any questions of Mr. Wines on his report? Very good. We'll move on to item 5.02, items from board members, non-action item. All right, moving on.
I just want
Oh,
to say
go
it's
ahead.
exciting seeing all the kids out playing sports and, us focusing on mental health. Like we had a conversation about that. That has to be a priority right now.
And I was just gonna say that the virtual STEM fair is gonna be coming up in March. And I think that's gonna be an interesting way to present that, but I'm looking forward to that. The last big event we had in Elko County was the STEM fair when we
Yeah.
gave out awards, and then school got closed down that weekend. So I'm looking forward to that, as we always do, and I'm sure we'll be hearing more about that.
Yes, and I definitely would encourage all board members to get over there to view the projects that these students have got in there. Very impressive.
Virtually.
Virtually,
Yeah,
yeah,
virtual.
virtual viewing.
Get on the computer.
Easier
Okay, get
than
normal.
ever.
Normal's getting to be virtual, you know? Okay. I would also mention to the board that tomorrow I'm on a video conference with the Teachers and Leaders Council. So there's some interesting changes in COVID, and distance learning has created some real issues, especially with the NEPF. And the legislature has had a hearing, interim legislative committee on education. Went through, I watched it this morning, and there's a lot of people asking questions about what the effectiveness is and how to make this system, the evaluation system, really meaningful and be able to identify the benefits that are coming out of it, such as student achievement, which it hasn't really done a very good job of showing or indicating student achievement in the previous surveys that they've done with it. So I look forward to that meeting.
Has the
And-
composition of that committee changed at all?
Yes, and they haven't really held a meeting instead of holding meetings like they normally would. This is the first meeting that I've been back on in about 6 months. So this has had a significant impact on that. And so the State Department's been doing a couple of surveys and trying to write some regulations, which in just with them saying that concerns me a little bit, but I look forward to seeing what they're.
And I assume that's a public meeting too.
Yes, I believe it is. Yeah. If you go to the Teachers and Leaders Council, Nevada Teachers and Leaders Council, and they'll have a meeting and you can view it. They're streaming it. Okay.
There is a bill to change some of the evaluations for a short term.
Yeah. Okay, other items from board members? All right, moving on. Item 6.01, approval of the accounts payable for possible action.
Move to approve.
Okay, been moved by Brian, seconded by Ira to approve the accounts payable. Any discussion?
I'll be disclosing that I have a family member who is listed, whose employer is listed on the accounts payable, so I will be abstaining.
All right. All those in favor signify by,
Quick
Oh,
question. Just
sorry.
Kenny, I don't know if actually anybody can answer it because I know Jerry's not here, but on page 2, there's a charge to E-Rate Central Consulting for $44,000. Does anybody know what that is?
Actually, yeah, I know what that is. It is,
okay.
it is for our E-rate consulting group that helps us get E-rate funds. They do all the paperwork and help me get everything taken care of.
Okay, thank you. Mike.
Okay. Any other questions? All right, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Chair votes aye, and the accounts are to be paid. All right, item 7.01, comments from the public, if any. This is a non-action item. Is there any public comment? All right, seeing none. Thank you all for attending, and thanks to those people that are watching us virtually. Hope you have a good evening. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you. I think.